Guess I should see what my camera looks like.
Oh, thanks, Jay. Might as well. All right, that's one. That's the
Confuse everyone.
21st and 22nd. Okay. Cost was $195.25. Okay. All right, we're on? Okay, good evening, everybody. It is 7:01 on October 7th, 2021, and this is the Lunenburg
Peter,
Finance.
not to interrupt, but did you hit record?
Oh, thank you. No, I didn't.
Yep.
Good call.
Thank you.
False start here. Bear with me, everybody.
Recording in progress.
All right. All right. Okay, take two. Good evening, everybody. This is the Lunenburg Finance Committee meeting. It is 7:02 on October 7th, 2021. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel and on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page. The following information is provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the Zoom link, the Zoom application, using webinar ID 874-7916-9262, or from a telephone, dial toll-free 888-475-4499. Again, same webinar ID 874-7916-9262, passcode 996077. If you are not registered with Zoom, you'll be asked for your name and an email address. Note that no participant ID is needed, just press pound when asked. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. And computer and application users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. Please note that the available Zoom option, the broadcast, and recordings are for the convenience of the public. If there are any technical difficulties that were to occur, the meeting will continue. If you wish to continue to participate, you must report to the location on this notice. Please be aware of this and plan accordingly. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. Before we begin, I want to note that we do have a quorum. I declare that we have a quorum present tonight by the current open meeting laws that we are operating in the state of Massachusetts. We have 3 members present, myself, Peter Beardmore, Mr. Menard, and Mr. Simeone, and Dave Passios is participating remotely. Mr. Waters, Mr. Gray, and Mr. Baelish are unable to attend this evening or have yet to arrive. With that, would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I do have a couple of announcements. Over the course of the past week, myself and I assume other members of the Finance Committee have received registration notices from the Mass Municipal Association to attend their annual meeting and trade show on January 21st and 22nd, which I believe is a Friday and Saturday, in person at the Heinz Convention Center. The registration amount for that meeting in advance is, I believe, $190. It might be $195. And then we also received an invitation to participate in the Association of Town Finance Committee's annual meeting, which is actually taking place over 3 subsequent Thursday evenings via Zoom. And those meetings will be October 21st from 7 to 8:15, October 28th from 7 to 8:15, and November 4th from 7 to 8:15. And there are different agendas for each one of those nights. There are 2 prices listed. One is for member organizations or member towns for $25, and for non-members, $35. I would note that I registered for both, but not knowing if we are members of the Association of Town Finance Committee meetings, I assumed that we were. So we may need to make a correction. I don't know. Heather, do you happen to know if we're members of that through our MMA membership or not?
You're good.
Yeah. We are, okay. So, what I would ask the members to do is, it should be in your email. If it's not, okay, so I will forward both of those emails to all the members. I think Mr. Passio's got at least one, because he mentioned it to me.
Did you get it?
But I will re-forward it to all of the members, and then for our next meeting next week, if you could come back and let us know if you're planning to attend either of those. It's important for us to know that, because we may need to make a budget adjustment based on the numbers of people who register, because the town will be billed, and I think we have I want to say $700 or $800 in that account, which may not be sufficient. So we'll need to do an accounting of that at a meeting in the near future. With that, I have no other announcements. Are there any other announcements from members of the board or the town manager? Seeing none, we'll move to public comment. Are there any public comments from members of the board? Any public comments from members of the public? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to Town Manager and Finance Director report. Madam Town Manager, good evening.
Good evening.
And we're back up. Tonight would be a perfect night to be down there.
I know, we're
but
a small
here we
group
are.
tonight. So I have short updates. I had notified the committee previously that new growth was submitted. That has been certified at the $430,254. So with all the changes in the budget, that leaves a surplus of approximately $39,000. The finance director has submitted the FY21 balance sheet to the Department of Revenue, and that we should be receiving certification on that shortly as well. And that submittal for our free cash number would be $2,665,798. A FY22 budget update. The DPW director informed me that the consortium bids for our road salt were received and prices increased approximately 38%. And this obviously will impact our FY22 snow and ice budget, which we're allowed to deficit spend. And the one piece of good news is that we had we didn't use much salt last year, so we have a lot of salt in reserves for the remainder of this year. So those are all my updates at this time.
Okay. That was short and sweet. Old business, review of town meeting articles. So in your email, you should have received from the town manager on, I want to say Monday or Tuesday of this week, a rundown of the special town meeting articles as they currently exist. We are currently still in alphanumeric mode for articles, and we currently are up to Article, what? MNOPQRS. So we will have a good agenda for the special town meeting.
I see a T.
Oh, there's a T somewhere? All right. Okay. Oh, yeah, I overlooked it. So, Madam Town Manager, do you want to kind of walk us through these? Is that probably the best way to do this? What I think we should look to accomplish tonight is if there's any relevant discussion to have prior to the special town meeting, and I would advise the members to use their own judgment on that. I think we're welcome to discuss any of them to the extent that we need to. But in particular, what I think we need to identify is where we need more information and who we need to get that from, and if we need to hear from them in living color next week. And that will set us up, I think, for a higher probability of success next week when we conduct our public hearing. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, Madam Town Manager.
All right. So Article A is our budget amendment article. Article B is,
Sorry.
okay. Article A, so what do we expect to be under Article A?
Yeah, I understand you're not going to have numbers today.
Right.
But what are we doing? What's the gist?
We've previously discussed two different areas, the assistant accountant position, and that would be, I believe that's approximately $4,000. And the IT budget would be transferring funds into the IT budget, and that would address a backup plan. We are applying for the IT Community Compact Grant, which is due next week. And we've applied for another grant through Maya, our insurance company. So this a backup plan, but also it's, I'm sure, necessary funds that we're going to need as one-time expenditures this year.
You have a ballpark?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but I will
And
for that meeting.
Is it you're thinking that, I know that currently we're running a deficit because something came in higher or lower than we anticipated, but now with the new growth number, we're back in the black, but now with these additional expenses, are we going to be somewhere near a balanced budget, or?
We will definitely go into the town meeting with a balanced budget.
Okay.
There'll be a transfer of funds.
Yep.
To
But this
make
is
that
going to get us to a
adjustment.
balanced budget, basically, and
Yeah.
that'll be, and the transfer will be covered in Article A?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, any questions on Article A?
Nope.
Jay, you look very thoughtful there.
Yeah, just, what are you transferring for the IT?
The amount I will have next week.
Okay, why are we transferring? Is there money in the salary line item?
Not into salary. This would be, so we're applying for infrastructure upgrades and software equipment or software that's needed. So this would be a backup plan as well to cover those expenses if we don't receive those grants.
But there's some additional costs associated with the consultants that
Yeah,
we've
how are we
hired
funding the consultant?
to backfill the IT director position,
Yes,
right?
that's going to be, that amount has to be
That'll
determined.
be in there as
yeah.
well. And that will be determined by next week?
Yep.
or- Okay. Article B, we're making great progress here.
Okay. Article B, prior year expenses. We will have a few outstanding invoices from prior year that were unknown at the end of the year.
Do we have any?
Yes, we will. C is the fire union collective bargaining agreement. Hope to have that finalized after the next select board's meeting on Tuesday.
Okay. So, do you anticipate a term of that contract?
That term, the 2-year,
2 year?
we're getting back on a cycle that we were previously on.
Okay. Okay,
Article D is to increase the abatement amount for the elderly exemption. That's from the Board of Assessors.
I'm sorry. Article C. So Article C would also include it's not just the ratification of the contract, there's a transfer in that as well, which will obviously have an effect.
Which would be from the salary reserve.
From the
account.
salary reserve, okay. Sorry. Good.
Any questions?
Continue, Article
Any
D.
questions on D?
So D is elderly exemption. We're raising the limit from 31.5, to a single person limit of 31.5 and a married person's limit of 39.6. What are they currently? Do you know?
I think it's in there. It's in there. Single person's limit 35 to 31,500 to 52,000.
There's no from.
There's no from.
Yep, that's just, we received that article the way it was written, so.
Okay, so can we get that information next week?
The amount?
Yeah, I'd like to understand
Please.
what we're moving, it says what we're moving to, I'd like to know what we're moving from.
Okay. I understand what you're asking now.
And has there been any financial analysis on this, or any budget, will there need to be any budgetary adjustment to accommodate this?
I believe the previous principal assessor did do a financial impact on that, and that would come out of the overlay.
So the current overlay
The amount
is
would be
covering
increased on the
this.
overlay.
Okay. Any discussion?
Quick question
Dave?
for me. Yeah, just wondering if I could ask the town manager, that account, has that normally had access at the end of the fiscal year anyway? The overlay account?
The overlay account is raised on the recap, so it's not something that's voted on at town meeting. It's an appropriation. It's through the assessors. And they determine an amount every year, what they need to hold for outstanding abatements and other potential litigation that would go through the court. And that, in prior years, that was changed where it was by the year. Now they've combined your sum, your aggregate of all the years outstanding. So it does carry year to year, the balance, to answer the long way around.
So it works effectively like an enterprise account, sort of?
It's reported to the DOR every year, so it's not certified like free cash is or retained earnings.
Okay.
But
Okay. I think we should probably make a note during budget season that we ought to get an explanation of that from the principal assessor, because I feel like I've been around long enough that I should probably understand that, and I don't. So. All right. E?
E is for a project on Leominster Shirley Road for an easement. The project is Lunenburg Central for a large industrial warehouse.
This is at the intersection with Reservoir, like at that corner?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm all in
It's a
support of this.
easement. F,
Who's going to brief E?
probably the best person to answer questions at this point, because it's going before the planning board right now for site plan approval, is the land use director.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm not suggesting that we need a briefing on this, although I'd leave that open to the board. I was just curious for town meeting purposes. What do you guys think?
I think as long as town meeting gets an explanation as to why it's being done, and my understanding is it is to be able to add width to the roadway for a turn lane or two. I don't think we need anything specific unless the rest of the board does.
This is likely to lean in the direction of a no financial impact article, do we think?
I would think so.
Okay.
It's a gift.
Wait, this isn't
It's a
for,
gift.
this isn't for the turn, this isn't for turning into the property, is it? This is for the
This is-
corner?
It's for the
No, it's for
intersection, isn't it?
property on the side of the road to provide for snow removal and maintenance of the road. It's a 10-foot easement further out of the right-of-way onto their property.
So they're giving us an easement
Yeah,
to put snow on their property.
essentially, and any side of the road maintenance that we need to do.
So this is not related to the line of sight issue at the turn near Reservoir Road?
The line of sight, I guess it is somewhat related, but that's being addressed. They are they're proposing to add a turn lane there. Yes.
That's a little further on, I think.
Further on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought that was at the entrance
It's a
of
little east of Reservoir Road, I think. Right,
Further
there's-
down.
Yeah.
It's just, no, lemons
Yes,
just
you come
showing.
around the corner, and it's already a difficult corner at Keating, because you can't see traffic coming. So I think there's a plan in place to try to make that better.
Yes.
But then there's another plan further down, closer to where the actual entrance to the new facility is, to make it, as Dave was mentioning, an additional lane for turning.
Yes.
Is it the latter, which this one addresses, or the?
The latter.
Okay. Maybe we do need clarification, just,
Or just a picture?
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not on, maybe Adam can just write a
Yes.
paragraph and send it to us, just so.
Sure.
I was excited that I wouldn't have to be scared turning onto Reservoir Road every time I,
You don't need to make that turn. Just go drive around.
just what?
I'm just kidding. All right.
Article F is an amendment to the sewer enterprise budget, which addresses increasing hours for the assistant to the sewer business manager position.
Do we have a number on that yet?
We will for next week. Article G, it has the amount included in the article and they do this annually, is to transfer funds into the sewer capital reserve stabilization.
So, I know that these are both relatively procedural. If we could just, and I wouldn't say that we need Mr. Oliver here for this, but if somebody could just kind of, similar to the one that we just talked about for E, just put together a paragraph or two explaining what we're doing and what the costs are.
Which one are we talking about?
Well, really F and
F
G.
and G.
Yep,
Yeah, they
F will
have the numbers.
have amounts
Right,
Yeah,
next week.
but like, why are we increasing the hours, that kind of thing.
they're hiring a part-time person. And now they're making it into it's more hours to make it a benefited position because they didn't have any luck finding someone. I think it was at 19 hours they were
Yes,
originally at.
yep.
And now they want to increase the hours, make it a benefit position. So
Which-
they have the numbers.
I'm sure is very well reasoned. I just, for our purposes, I'd like to have them.
And the intent for, the whole intent also it was succession planning for that position as well. So having someone at increased hours will assist with that transition eventually too.
Okay?
Article H is the Historical Commission's article on the demolition delay amendment. And this is an amended version from their first version. So all the proposed amendments are italicized and in bold.
My only comment on this is I hate the word bi-monthly because it means twice a month and every other month, so it's ambiguous.
But there's really no
So,
budget impact.
They took out the fine and replaced it with adding a day, extending the delay period each day that there was a delay in the filing. So that was a financial piece that was in that previous version.
So basically, we're forcing more paperwork.
More accountability, which generates some paperwork, yes.
Okay.
But there's really no effect to the budget. If there is, then I'd say it's minimal.
Okay.
Article I is to amend the salary administration plan schedule, which is all the positions and their grades. So these are previously voted on by the Personnel Committee, so it's just to include it in the grid for the seasonal cemetery labor, the alternate building commissioner, and there was an error in the title for the PAC production assistant, so it should have been PAC production technician, not assistant.
Okay. Are all these positions currently filled and budgeted?
Budgeted, yes. Production technician, yes. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes and yes. And articles J, K, and L.
My favorite.
Do you want to skip over those and go back to them?
Well, actually, I think we need to discuss these a little bit. And so the issue is, so just for people playing along at home who may not be, I just see, in fact, Mr. Alonso was in the waiting room. I've just admitted him. So for those of you who may be watching at home who are not up to speed on the three articles, J, K, and L, they all pertain to the work that's been done by the TC Passier's Building Design Committee, were submitted by the TC Passier's Building Design Committee, and were approved by the Select Board for inclusion on the warrant Tuesday night. The J and K, to the best of my ability, I mean, J is pretty straightforward, it's just a report. K, it's my understanding that we're not going to have all of the relevant information that we're going to need for the public hearing, because at the annual town meeting, we appropriated money to go out and get a comparative estimate on a tear-down rebuild comparison for like use. And we are not expected to have that information until after the public hearing. And then L.
Wait, for K, I thought we had the number.
We do.
We have the value of the rehab to the existing building. But if you recall, in the spring, the reason why we went forth with the tear-down rebuild estimate was because we wanted a same comparison in terms of whether we were getting the dollar value or not.
No, I guess my point being that K can stand on its own.
K is the renovation alone.
The renovation, we have all the data we
Yeah.
need, and they could up or down vote it, and we could have a public hearing on that number.
So
We lack the ability to compare it to what a complete new tear-down build.
so that's a missing piece of data, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Is
but
that-
K can stand on its own.
But K could have just as easily stood on its own at Springtown meeting.
Sure.
We appropriate another $50,000 to get another data point that we still don't have.
Yeah, there's just nothing missing on K in and of itself.
In and of itself, no, except that comparative data point.
I think
So,
where the problem really comes in is when you get to L,
oh,
because then you're voting additional money.
there's
Because
definitely,
then you're asking for additional money for a number that we won't have until a couple of weeks after the public hearing.
yeah. So I guess my inclination on this is I think that these three articles go together. And they're different, they're clearly different articles, but they go together in terms of discussion. They were intended to go together as, for discussion purposes, and I feel like we ought to discuss them in that spirit, whenever that information becomes available, at our earliest availability, once that information is available. I don't really see the point of pursuing these articles next week without that information. But I could be, I mean, I'll certainly go with the preference of this committee. That's my opinion.
Yeah, my preference would be leading into here is that we have J and K and L get pushed off to annual town meeting. Because we're going to have very little, if any, time to do a real comparative analysis, understand where funds are coming from, have time to vet it through the public, and I don't think it's the right time to do on the floor, especially if the numbers themselves for J are not going to be finalized until, November.
So
So I agree with you on
just to
that.
be clear, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, we agree on this. The problem is that that's not the situation that we find ourselves in, right? We have three articles that have been approved by 4 members of the select board, and they're going to town meeting. So the question is how do we want to handle them as a finance committee between now and November, the date?
16th.
16th.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like you said, on K, I guess we could hear a public hearing on that. I don't understand how we have an adequate public hearing on L, unless we know even the planning value. Will we have a planning value by next week?
I'm not sure.
So I do not think we should go into next week saying that we've held a public hearing on L. We should push that off to a future public hearing, like we talked about leading in, in our rules and
Yeah.
policies or whatever we called it.
So I guess, I mean, we could certainly vote to approve to hear a committee report next week. We could hear a preliminary version of that report next week, but I also want to make best use of everybody's time, right? Like, I don't necessarily think we need to have the building committee in next Thursday, only to have them back in 2 or 3 weeks later to do the same thing all over again.
Yeah, well,
I mean, we could, but I just don't see.
Peter, our first meeting in November is November 10th, is that correct?
Yeah, sounds about right.
I'm sorry, 11th.
11th is
That's a
Veterans
holiday.
Day.
Veterans Day.
Oh, boy. I hadn't noticed that. And we're meeting, and the special town meeting is the 16th. So I think the best we could possibly do is have an out-of-sync meeting on the 4th.
Right. And that's, except for the fact that we're pushing for it before that, that is the tentative date for the information to be available.
I'm sure this won't be the last time I say this, but I hate to say I told you so.
So,
Yeah,
the other
was
thing
quite upset last night.
So the other thing I heard on, because I did listen to the select board meeting with respect to L, is that there seems to be keeping the, I may say this wrong, but, we're going to amend the language throughout the next few weeks leading into what we present at town meeting on the, would you say the 16th?
16th, yes.
So again, I don't know. I don't like this approach on something of, let's just say $25 million worth of appropriations ultimately, and 250,000 or 300,000 or whatever the number is comparable for L. So
The intent is to have a dollar amount in L that will be
By-
printed in the warrant.
Okay, so by next week or the week after?
So what do we want to
We
do?
can defer till town meeting.
Well, we can certainly do that. We can also hear and discuss the issue in advance as we normally do and still defer to town meeting. You know, like, I mean, there's nothing saying that we have to make a
Right.
recommendation come the 14th of October or the 4th of November. You know, we don't have to do any of that. What I'm getting to is there value? I think the finance committee needs to have a thorough discussion about this as a finance committee prior to town meeting. That's my personal point of view.
I agree. I think the finance committee should have a write-up in the warrant on what we believe the impacts of this are financially, like we do in annual town meeting with the budget. I mean, this is a significant
So,
investment
so
for the
one
town.
additional data point, just for everybody to consider. Last spring, maybe last winter, the town manager prepared a report with a proposed or a pro forma debt service schedule that included the number that we had last spring for the existing building and the projected number way out at the end of the decade for a potential project for Turkey Hill, projected out, I believe, another 25 or 30 years, I think was the borrowing term. It had us out to like 2060. What I've requested privately this week of the town manager is to update that projection from the consultants so that we have a pro forma debt service schedule for K, as well as an overlay with the estimate that we had for the Turkey Hill project. So that we can, in fact, under the auspices of our financial consultants, at least be able to say, these will be our carrying costs going forward for this project, and a pro forma look at what it might cost us for a Turkey Hill project 7 or 8 years down the road. Now, we should have that information back here next Tuesday, right?
No, by the public hearing date.
That's next Tuesday. Oh, Thursday, I'm sorry.
Thursday.
I don't want to cut you 2 days short. By next Thursday. So that is an additional piece of information that we could potentially, to your suggestion, Chris, put in the warrant as a piece of information, you know, without necessarily a recommendation from the finance committee or with a recommendation from the finance committee. I don't think I would feel comfortable voting on a recommendation, though, without a thorough hearing of J, K, and L together, which means we would need to bring in the building committee, have a thorough discussion about all of this next week, and vote on whatever information that we have for the warrant next week.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is I'm ready to vote K as a no, that I would recommend against K. Then the question just becomes, would I recommend against doing this project at all? L. I mean, I think the numbers I'm hearing whispered around, or maybe they were stated, I don't know, says that, you know, in essence, they're similarly costs. So why would I not tear down a building and build new and modern and, you know, with sizes that are more appropriately and not shoehorned into former classrooms? That, but I do think that L has a lot of leg work ahead of it with respect to what it should become. And the value we should assign for a bogey. I mean, perhaps this board should even come forward and say, our recommendation is that it's between these number and this number based on the projections we see for this town. And I think that that would help a design committee to know this is, you know, what is economically feasible for this town.
Okay. Dave, any thoughts on how we do this?
No, not really. As I started to say a few minutes earlier, my frustration level peaked last night during the meeting. It just, you know, I warn every single time we have a meeting, not just with this committee, but others too, that, you know, you've got to keep looking and work from your deadline date backwards and see where you're at every single meeting. And I was assured up until last night that, oh, there's no problem. This is a no-brainer. They've already got the information. It should only take a couple weeks. And interestingly enough, the 60 days for the contract is up at the end of this month also. And I got the impression that the engineer wasn't aware that that time frame was in there. And that's why I was glad I brought it up towards the end of the meeting. No matter what, Peter, where any decent information on this project is going to be last minute. As I say, October 4th was the tentative date that was promised to have the number actually available, and he cautioned that if we try to rush it any sooner than that, then the number would not be as fine-tuned as what we've been looking for. You know, maybe a couple of days earlier. The TC Passios committee is still planning to have some type of a hearing meeting, probably in that second week of November. I think we're going to be able to set that date at our next meeting. It got kind of late last night, and the feel was we wanted to wait a week and see what kind of feedback we got after telling the engineer that the deadline we were up against, and see what he can come back to us with. As for the finance committee's position, definitely any support or non-support for any one of the three, I think, should wait to town meeting floor. The first one, as we've said, that's a no-brainer. That's a report. And that will spit out all the numbers, and hopefully we'll do that the week before also in our formal outreach meeting, so that the numbers will get out there in basically the same form that we're going to present at town meeting. It's an effort to try to get more people aware of what the numbers are and how they were derived. I get the point about not having the number for a public hearing on the 14th as being a problem. And the only other possibility for the finance committee to pull a public hearing on the number once it comes out would be that week. You know, a day other than a Thursday in that second week, or the 4th, assuming the numbers are available.
Okay.
I don't know if that helped any or not.
All right. I'm also mindful of the fact that we have three members who aren't part of this discussion right now, who I think deserve some level of deference on this. What I'm going to suggest is that we have the same conversation again next week. And we can decide amongst ourselves to the extent that we want to hear it or discuss it, or when we discuss it. And as part of that discussion, I think that we should invite the leadership of the building committee to next week's meeting. And if we can accomplish something there, great. If we can't, we can come up with perhaps a tentative plan for what we can accomplish and when.
Yeah, but Peter, one other thing too, so everybody's aware, and this was thoroughly discussed at the select board meeting Tuesday night, and that is that if the feeling between the select board and the TC Passios committee is that it has not come together enough to present it on town meeting floor, then the articles will be passed over. I don't know if I would assume the first one would go forward, or maybe not even that one. They may decide to pass over all three of them. I'm not sure yet. But that's the circuit breaker. You know, a Passover vote on town meeting floor could negate all three of them.
I don't think they would pass over the first one, because
Oh, no,
I
I mean,
think,
the first one, I think
yeah,
we should hear this, we should hear the report no matter what.
there's been a
but-
report every
But
meeting.
Articles K and L, I see the point. I mean, Mr. Menard and I agree, I think, almost entirely on this. There's another piece to this, and, you know, I really appreciate the work that this committee has done. It's been a 2.5-year slog through a pandemic and through a lot of ambiguity. But, you know, this committee and now, with the cooperation of the select board, is not only putting the citizens in a difficult position to make a rather, and I think some members are oversimplifying this. This is a complex topic. And we're putting the citizens of Lunenburg in a position where they have to absorb a lot of complex information in a rather short amount of time and make a major financial. Whoa, I think we just lost television back there. Dave, can you still hear us?
I think we need to
Yes,
find
we can.
ways to overcome the sense of security.
We,
by many of these programs.
Something broke off the TV in the back of the room, and it's,
Take more risks to go out there.
let's just pause for a second here.
Why it's taking so long.
The FinCom is
I'm still
experiencing
online.
technical difficulties.
Sit tight for a second.
Still to this day, Memphis movie
Probably the YouTube link.
all around coming. Man, this place is so beautiful.
I think we need to find ways to overcome the sense.
Can we just turn that off?
By many of these programs and encourage people to take.
We have audio in the rest of the room, so I can handle it from here. Dave, they can't see you, but I can.
Okay.
So, as I was saying, the position that I think we're finding ourselves in here is, you know, now everyone has knowingly put ourselves in a very difficult position, to include, in particular, the members of this committee. We have a charge, we have a duty here. We went through a process just a few weeks ago about setting our standards and expectations for the amount of time that we need to thoroughly consider things. And at the first opportunity, those positions have been relatively ignored by 2 other committees in town, to include our executive committee. And I'm hopeful that we can come to a better place, but right now I certainly don't feel that. Mr. Alonso has his hand up, and I will unmute him, or ask him to unmute. Go ahead, Mr. Alonso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make I'll call it a PSA at this point, just to reiterate some of the discussion that was talked about on the select board meeting, and my own position here. And you acknowledged all the work that this committee, the current TCP design committee, has put in, and I echo that. I think they've put in an incredible amount of work. And then the building reuse committee before them for 5 years or thereabouts. My ultimate goal, and I would hope that everybody who's followed this and all the people who have attended various town meetings over the years, our ultimate goal is to make a decision as a town what we do with that building. And as I said on Tuesday night and the weeks before that these articles, and I'm the one person who voted against these articles going forward, puts people in the position that, Mr. Chair, that you just illustrated, that you just outlined, to make a decision on data that is very, very late in coming. Now I'm hearing from Mr. Passios that at last night's CCP meeting, it's not even going to be until a week and a half or possibly 2 weeks before town meeting that anybody will even, committee themselves will have the numbers. Even if it was gotten tonight, I believe there would not be enough time to disseminate that information and have a full discussion, which is why I voted not to put it on this town meeting and put it on the annual, which gives us plenty of time to evaluate both choices and revisit even K, because when was the last time anybody saw a presentation on K was in May, and that was a full 6 months ago. So we really need to slowly bring this to town meeting so that people can be up to speed on all the options so that we can make a decision that gets us to move forward and not risk people looking at the price tag and looking at them serially and saying no to that one, no to this one, and we find ourselves nowhere. And that doesn't even touch on the fact that adding the $250,000 to $265,000 to L that's going to be needed for that design kind of compromises or certainly breaks tradition about how free cash is assigned. But I mean, as a finance committee, I'm sure you'll take that question up as well. So to me, again, I will reiterate what I said then, being in the minority, but still feeling that, with the effort to move things forward, this is not the way to do it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Alonso. Mr. Alonso brought up another point, though, that I did not bring up when I outlined my thoughts on these articles, which is we do not have a funding source for L right now. So not to say that won't arrive by next week. I think that the town manager is looking at that, but as of Tuesday, we didn't have a fund source. So is that still the case?
After discussing it with the finance director, and I said this the other night, the only two sources would be stabilization or free cash, because we'll have free cash certified by then. I would reluctantly say it would come out of free cash. I don't think it meets the definition of what we should use stabilization funds for. And we certainly have earmarked certain stabilization funds for very specific purposes.
Okay. And, that opens up a whole other can of issues, which is the process that has served us very well over the course of the last several years when it comes to how we manage our free cash and how we go about doing that. And that would undermine, to a certain extent, that process.
It's not our tip. Yeah, we reserve use of free cash till the annual town meeting in the spring.
If I may ask, Mr. Alonso, remind me the date you thought you would get the values associated coming out of the study for what the project would cost and what the planning would cost? What was the basis of the discussion last week to move forward with JK&L?
So we, as a board, were getting information straight from the TCP design committee, and they assured us on Tuesday that there would be plenty of time, and put that, in some kind of quantitative way. I don't know what plenty of time is, but plenty of time to discuss this before town meeting. I said even if we had it that night, it would still only be 6 weeks to discuss it. But we were going on that in the next week or so we would have the number. But I understand, unless I misheard Mr. Passios, who's a member of that committee, that when they met last night, we're expecting that now until November. Now, that may have changed the majority's mind in the board. I have no way of knowing that. But it may have swayed them if we knew that it was only going to be a week and a half or 2 weeks before special town meeting. But what we were told, which was not sufficient for me anyway, was we would have it within the next week or so.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I guess with the permission of this board, the members of this board that are here, my intent right now is to hear these in order next week and make a decision on them as we go, unless we have a
Well, you're not the chairman next week.
well, that's a good point. That's a very good point. I guess the existing chairman next week can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, that's right. Just kidding.
So I will not be seated as chairman next week. I intend to arrive late, so Mr. Menard is going to chair next week's meeting. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the path we're on right now.
I think L's a no-brainer, obviously. I mean,
L?
J,
J?
oh, wait, sorry, I moved.
the other report.
J.
J, yeah.
Yeah, here are a report. So it really comes down to two that are,
Yep, agree. Okay. Well, that was fun. M.
Let's regroup here.
Flat Hill.
So it's the easements needed for the Flat Hill Road Culvert project. And
So, we've been talking about Flat Hill Road culvert for a long time. Is this a new development?
it was, came up by the engineer that these were needed as part of the project. So knowing that we're going before town meeting, there's no dollar associated with them, but we should
So
vote them
we'll-
at town meeting.
But we don't have a project underway right now because we don't have it fully funded, right? So
Correct.
we're just doing this, assuming that
Yes,
we're gonna get the money to take care of it.
yes,
Okay.
yep. N is from N and O are from Conservation. N was, there was an error, this was previously voted and the wrong map and parcel number were in the original vote, so this is correcting that.
This is,
For 970 rear New West Townsend Road.
Could I make a comment on that?
I'm just, before you do, Dave, is this the Flat Rock? What property is this?
No.
Table
New
Table
West
Rock?
Townsend Road?
No, it's over near the Townsend line. It's part of what they call, it's on the edge of the West Town Forest. That was the article that I questioned the name of the street being wrong, because
Oh, right, okay.
West Town, what was it, Townsend West Road or something
Right.
like that doesn't exist. And I believe, based on that information that's in that article, that was correct, that it was wrong.
Okay,
Because now it's being called West Townsend Road, New West Townsend
New
Road.
West,
so we're fixing that with this article.
yes.
Okay.
O is an article to transfer this parcel 781 rear Page Street from Conservation to the Select Board. I'm sorry, reverse, from the Select Board to Conservation. And, but that, there's going to be more discussion on that on Tuesday. Right now, it's owners unknown, which means we don't have a clear title to that property. So we would want that going into town meeting before any
So
action
was
was
this
taken.
part of that audit that the Conservation Commission did on land that
They've
was sort
been-
of in ambiguous position?
They've been doing a lot of research, so on a number of parcels, so.
That's
this
Fairbanks'
is-
gift, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
And that's owner unknown? It was gifted to us.
There's another piece to it, I believe. of
Well, I was
that
looking at this,
parcel.
and I thought map 85 parcel 1 was Fairbanks' gift. There's other parcels in there that are owners unknown.
Right, other
Okay.
parcels adjacent to it,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
But this one is owners unknown.
So we're gonna hear more about this?
Yes, or if it stays on the warrant, I'm not sure.
Okay. Does anybody think that there's financial impact to this?
No,
Okay.
just interest.
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm interested too, but I'll be more interested in town meeting than I will at a finance committee meeting.
P is to amend the sewer service area map by adding Marshall Park, which the line goes by Marshall Park already, so this would add it to the service area. And this was submitted by the Park
Standing
Commission.
idea. Any discussion on this?
If you like it. I know my wife likes it.
Does this have to do with the bathrooms?
Yes,
It was submitted to give Parks 2 avenues for permanent toilets at Marshall Park.
yep.
More
There's,
options.
yes, they have an option through the Board of Health, through funds available to do a regular septic system there. But this would offer another alternative
Yeah.
to put sewer in.
How
And
would they pay for the sewer? Would they have to budget for that?
It was a master plan in progress, so I would assume it would be part of whatever the master plan would do.
Right, and the issue was that
The
the
utility.
pipe is out in Route 2A, but there is no stub on the pipe because Marshall Park was not in the sewer district. So first step is to get it added to the district map, and then work up a comparative price to do all the work to hook into it under Route 2A and bring it into the park.
Suffice
So,
to say, there's no appropriation yet.
Correct.
It's just the,
correct.
And
And it has to go back to the sewer commission again before anything can be done anyway.
okay. Q.
Q, R, S, and T, I will leave to Mr. Barney to address any questions.
Okay.
And to go back to your question on the assessor's elderly abatement, I don't believe there's any. Those are the existing thresholds under Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5. It would be increasing the $750 to $1,000 abatement amount.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Okay. That solves it pretty easily in my head then. I mean, that becomes much more of a no-brainer. So for Q, R, and S, T is not part of,
T is also planning board.
okay. I would like to hear from Mr. Burney then as to maybe a summary and potential applicability, financial applicability. And that can be in writing or in person.
Okay.
In writing, preferably in advance,
Or both.
or both. He's always welcome. Might be easier to do it in person, frankly.
If he's available, I'll
Okay,
let him know.
yep. Any further discussion on town meeting warrant articles? Hearing none. I added an agenda item for tonight as an open discussion on takeaways from department head discussions, possible earmark, and budget priorities. You might want to stick around.
Shouldn't work
And
heels
my purpose
tonight.
for doing this, and this could very well be a very short discussion considering our just getting to quorum tonight, it may be a better discussion for the whole board, and there's a playoff game starting in a matter of minutes, I believe. But my question for the town manager before we open this up is, where are you at with respect to your earmark discussions with the select board and setting those priorities?
I don't have a list yet formulated. That changed from the previous year. That's a discussion that I'd like, to have with the board and try to plan a meeting with our legislators within the next few weeks.
Okay. Just for your information, all three legislators have responded affirmatively to attend our meeting on the 28th, the joint meeting. I don't think that that's an appropriate meeting to discuss earmarks at. We'll probably have plenty to talk about with the planned agenda at this point, but just so you know. I believe Representative Senna is going to be remote, but Representative Kishmarek and Senator Cronin have both indicated that they intend to attend in person.
Is that meeting here, the
Yes.
28th?
Yeah. And Mrs. Archambault and I will need to figure out exactly how we're going to conduct that. We haven't had that discussion yet, but we will. Okay, are there any comments or observations that any of the members would like to make with respect to budget priorities or earmarks that might have shaken out from those conversations that we've had over the course of the last couple of months?
So one thing, just to note, I reached out to the library director, Muir, and he did send me their strategic plan. I think
I
I
have
might
it
have
as
sent
well.
it to you.
Yep.
I also put it in tonight's folder for the meeting, and I don't know if that's available to the public yet. I mean, it's
I think it's
approved,
supposed to be
right?
on the website.
on theirs.
Yes.
I believe it's a public document, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see it on their website, but it was good. So they're one that, they are asking for maybe a one-time increase in some budgets. And I think, given the needs for community and expanded hours and that sort of thing, perhaps that's through this budget cycle, maybe if we're kind of upping one of the departments, this might be a year to start marching down their strategic plan.
So, I probably should have put an agenda item on this, but I think it's probably, I feel comfortable mentioning it under this item is, I think that as we think about earmarks, we think about earmarks with respect to the effect of certain projects on the budget and the fact that an earmark will alleviate some of the impact that those projects would otherwise have. I think the additional variable this year is the ARPA money and whether or not we can justify ARPA spending on any one of a whole bunch of projects. And so, my request, and I don't know if you're going to be prepared to do this or you've got enough guidance on ARPA, but I think that there needs to be some context there, right? Like,
I can add, so what's complicating matters is it's from the federal level down. Everybody's waiting for the federal decisions to be made on what's going to happen with the infrastructure bill, because that could impact what the state's going to do with their funding plan for ARPA, which impacts the town at our level as well. So we don't want to miss out on certain opportunities if this is going to be funded some other way. So it's a domino effect that's happening.
are there some communities that are spending ARPA money and kind of
I
rolling
don't
the
know
dice?
of any community. They just pushed out actually a reporting deadline till April, because
Wow.
so yeah, everyone's still trying to formalize plans, and there's a lot of uncertainty and cautiousness around the U.S. Treasury not providing enough guidance and us going ahead with a spending plan, and in the end, after they audit it, saying it wasn't eligible.
Okay. I mean, it's.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse.
Well, it seems like the end of 2024 is a long way away, but the problem that I think, we're all going to run into is construction is going to be a really good business to be in the, in the 60 months or 54 months between mid 22 and the end of 24, or whatever that is, 36 months, whatever it is. It's going to be a really good time to be in construction. And
it's going to drive up costs.
it's going to drive up costs, going to drive down supply. It's going to, so, unless they amend it, of course, which they could very well do, but,
Yeah.
okay.
So another couple just takeaways from my perspective. One, the cost of services and goods has gone up, right? So one of the things that got me thinking, it was at the school committee last night when they were talking about the air conditioner and what they voted on to push forward on that. It was less than what the engineer requested, and I think we need to be more on the conservative side, maybe with our capital project requests, than on the less conservative side. And I also wonder, and this is just me not
Agree.
knowing all the details of the capital planning process, but does that include like a basis of estimate that's written up for each of the projects, like how you arrived at the?
We try to get estimates for construction projects,
Okay.
but it doesn't go through a formal bid process or.
Not a
you know,
formal bid
yeah.
process, but,
Yeah.
is there at least somewhere, here's my project, here's the basis of my estimate?
Right,
Like
so
how
if
I
it was
arrived.
for a piece of equipment, there's a estimate from a company
Yeah,
provided with the specifications.
Okay, because that one was kind of, I think, a mix of both materials and labor and that sort of thing, but. And then the final thought just is, we have a lot of, IT, rec, library, school overlap, perhaps on where services could overlap or could be streamlined. And I think, that we need to look to those opportunities to consolidate and streamline operations. There was a bit of a discussion yesterday on that at the school committee. It's, sometimes they offer like adult fitness programs. Well, why isn't the rec department doing that? They might offer adult programs, but the library's also offering some programs, and.
We
and-
do work together with all the departments do. Like the library and the school work together a lot. And all the other town departments, do
Yeah.
talk about programming and how, whether it be something that can be done at the senior center for elders for, say, IT related or, so there is collaboration.
Yeah, I just think that there's a couple new departments, right? The rec department, or rec director, the library strategic plan talks about becoming more of a community center, not just we give out books. So there's potential overlaps between those that we just got to make sure that we're streamlining and not hiring two people when we could hire one or that sort of thing. So those are just some observations. IT was the other example, like we talked about many times.
Yep.
So that brings up, the topic of the IT director, and I know that that's a whole thing that's in process, and there's a lot to figure out there still. But it is interesting that we have a shared IT function today, and there's talk about splitting that IT function back between the town and the school department. We have split facilities functions today between the schools and the town, and there's discussion about consolidating that. So, it's interesting. And I know that there's good reasons amongst all of that, but, I think one of the reasons why those conversations evolve, or is it the school's job to have pickleball, or is it the Parks Department job to have pickleball?
Right.
Or is that there aren't necessarily clear guardrails that have been agreed to, right? So, the school department and the Parks Department had a subcommittee, and they went through a pretty substantial effort around figuring out shared use of facilities. And, I don't think it's perfect, but it's probably better than where we were just a few months ago, right? So I think we've got to encourage those discussions to occur, right?
And I think we've got to look for where there are opportunities that they may be missing for synergies and bring those to light. And then if the direction is, we want to take on the extra cost because of whatever reasons, then that's outside of our control, I guess, but our recommendations can be, to go in a different direction.
Yeah, and we should.
And I'm not trying to say that there's not
Right.
collaboration amongst everything, it's just that you kind of pick up on all these things where there's potential collaborations, especially now that, libraries changed their strategic plan and, we have a rec director and that sort of thing. So the calculus changed over the last couple of years. And then the IT, like we talked about. So
Do you think that we're going to have a plan for this facilities discussion that's sort of been underway for a while for next year?
For the fiscal '23 budget process, that's my intent.
And will that incorporate the school department, or will that just be a separation of duties within the DPW, or you don't know?
I don't know at this point. It would mean continuing discussions with the school superintendent.
Okay. Any other discussion on this item? Hearing none. Thank you,
Thank you.
Town Manager. Okay, we have no new business. We do have two sets of minutes. one from September 23rd, one from September 9th, and one from September 23rd. I believe we were all here for the 23rd, and I believe we were all here for the 9th. So if we do have a quorum that can vote to approve these minutes if we choose to do so tonight.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes of September 9th and 23rd.
Second?
Okay, this is a roll call vote. Mr. Passios,
Aye,
was that a yes, Dave?
that was a yes.
Okay. Mr. Simeoni,
Aye.
Mr. Menard,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. Both sets of minutes are approved.
And the minutes are excellent, by the way.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. By the way, Chris brought up in the last meeting that we still have some outstanding minutes from the last fiscal year. I've been negligent in doing that audit, and we'll have a request out to Amanda this week. Committee reports.
I don't have anything.
Okay. The school committee met last night. Unfortunately, I had a conflict and was in and out of the meeting. There was a budget line transfer, which I don't have the details on. I put an email out to Mr. Cassidy on today. But basically, they're doing what they do every year to get the books ready for the end of first quarter report. Some of which involves rebalancing for things like retirees in one building that were replaced by new teachers and that sort of thing. So that sort of effort is going on. And then the other conversation that I caught was it appears that there is some research going into exactly what should be comprised of the bid invitation for the busing contract. And many of the issues that we talked about with the superintendent and finance director at our last meeting, to include revisiting radius and that sort of thing as well as potential fees and alike. Is there any public comment?
Did Dave have a committee report?
Oh, Dave.
You pretty much, we discussed the committee report.
I overlooked your weekly soliloquy.
Yeah, I pretty much don't have any report except that all the committees I sit on are moving forward in their normal manner and as slow as ever with TCP. We discussed it earlier, but for the benefit of people who may have missed it earlier, TCP design met, we met with the Board of Selectmen on Tuesday and convinced them, at least temporarily, to, for the time being, I should say, to put the 3 articles that we proposed onto the special town meeting warrant. I'm sure there'll be a lot more discussion between now and special town meeting and some decisions made right up to the hour of town meeting as to whether or not the articles actually get moved onto the floor at that meeting. So more to be advertised about that over the next few weeks. We have got a pretty decent floor plan finalized and voted on and sent to the engineers to start working on the cost analysis for the actual building itself. What's going to take the extra time that we talked about earlier and push the final number into early November is the fact that the site development around the building, adjusting the access road, parking, etc., that has to be, give the engineers at least a couple of weeks, and then the costing department other 2 weeks, once they have all 3 aspects of the proposal, to get a dollar number put together for us. So that's it. As I say, I've been frustrated with, the the expectation that it would move very quickly and it would be very easy to get what we needed for special town meeting. And as the last year and a half has been, it's been very frustrating because of delays and just the progress moving slower than hoped. And we'll do the best we can to bring whatever information we can to a special town meeting or before if possible. That's about it. Parks is working on their, actually, I'm not sure if the proposal went out. We finalized it at our last meeting with a couple of edits, and the chair and vice chair were authorized to make those edits and submit the RFP to be distributed. I'm not exactly sure where that is right at the moment. We are trying to move forward with that process so that we can, over the winter start really getting down to the nitty-gritty of what Marshall Park's is going to look like in the future. That's about it.
Okay. Any other committee reports? Nope.
No.
Public comment. Is there any public comment? Hearing none. Items for future meetings. Right now, our future meetings are, we have a public hearing on the 14th of October. We have a joint school committee meeting on the 28th of October. And tentatively, right now, I think we are going to have another public hearing, most likely on the 4th of November, pending further developments.
Is the select board also coming to the 28th?
They've
So
been
that's
invited to attend individually, but
Not as a board?
if they all decide they're coming, they should probably post.
Okay.
But I did invite them. Big,
Is there a meeting capacity in
put a
this
big
room?
ring- I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Okay, so there's no, okay. The floor will hold us?
Come on, Chris, you
Listen,
can play
Will.
basketball up there, jump up and down.
All right. Any other future meeting items?
I think we're
Hearing-
pretty busy over the next few weeks.
Yes. Hearing none, I would hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Passios,
Aye.
Mr. Simeoni,
Aye.
Mr. Menard,
All right.
and an aye for myself. Have a good night, everybody. See you next Thursday.